Listen, I need to tell you something about humans that nobody warned us about in orientation. And trust me, after what happened last cycle at the Galactic Defense Academy, they really should have. My name is Vec, and I serve as the administrative coordinator for discipline and order at the Academy. Boring job, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Especially when you have a human enrolled in your institution. The girl's name was Kira Webb. 22 standard solar cycles old. Brown hair, average height by human standards, lean build. Nothing remarkable in her file. Just another cadet from that backwater planet Earth. Here on some cultural exchange program that Command approved, because they thought it would be, quote, amusing to see how primitives handle advanced combat training, end quote. Spoiler alert, we stopped laughing pretty fast. It started on a fourth day right after Advanced Tactical Response class. Professor Jin, our weapons instructor, a four-armed Voltex with 17 combat citations, had just dismissed the cadets. Standard procedure. The class filtered out toward the meal hall, chattering in a dozen languages, comparing scores on the simulation runs. Kira was walking alone as usual. The human kept to herself mostly. Not unfriendly, just observant, always watching, taking mental notes. I had noticed this in the surveillance feeds. But hey, humans were new to the program. Maybe that was just how they processed information. She was halfway down Corridor 7 when they made their move. 6 cadets. All seniors. All from prominent military families across the coalition, led by a Krellian named Torv. Built like a battlecruiser, scales thick as hull plating. The others fanned out behind him. 2 Zentari twins with their notorious speed genetics. A Gormath heavy fighter and 2 Pelaxian tactical specialists. The surveillance footage shows Torv stepping directly into Kira's path. She stopped, looked up at him. The size difference was comical. Honestly, he had at least 3 feet and 200 pounds on her. Human, Torv said, his translator rendering the word with maximum contempt. You don't belong here. Your species is barely spacefaring. You have no business training alongside real warriors. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because Kira just tilted her head slightly, like she was considering his words, analyzing them, and then she smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that makes your survival instincts scream. Is that right? She asked, her voice steady, calm, terrifyingly calm. You embarrass us all by your presence, one of the Zentari twins added, circling to Kira's left. Every day you remain here degrades the Academy's reputation. We're going to file a formal complaint, the other twin said, moving right. Classic pincer formation. But first we thought we'd make our point more physically clear. I was watching this feed in real time from my office. Standard protocol says I should have intervened immediately. Called security. Dispatched peacekeepers. But something stopped me. Maybe curiosity. Maybe stupidity. I wanted to see how the human would handle herself. Kira set down her datapad carefully on the floor, straightened up, rolled her shoulders once. You know what's funny? She asked. Nobody in particular. Back on Earth, I wasn't even considered that good. I was middle of the pack in my training unit. Average at best. Torv laughed. It echoed down the corridor like grinding metal. Then this should be over quickly. Yeah, Kira agreed. It really should be. What happened next took exactly 47 seconds. I know because I reviewed the footage approximately 200 times afterward, trying to understand what I had witnessed. The Gormath heavy fighter moved first, throwing a punch that could dent starship plating. Kira wasn't there anymore. She had dropped into a low slide, passing between the Gormath's legs, rolling to her feet behind him. Before he could turn, she had kicked out his knee. Hyperextension medical report later said he'd need 3 weeks of regeneration therapy. The Zentari twins attacked simultaneously from both sides. Their species was famous for reaction times 3 times faster than baseline humanoid standards. Didn't matter. Kira twisted, grabbed one twin's extended arm, used his own momentum to swing him into his brother. They collided with a sound like dropped equipment. Both went down in a tangle of limbs. The 2 Pelaxian specialists tried coordinating, using the tactical combat frequencies all Academy cadets are issued. One went high, one went low. Professional. Efficient. Would have worked against almost any single opponent. Kira caught the low attacker's wrist, twisted it at an angle that made me wince even through the camera feed, simultaneously driving her elbow backward into the high attacker's throat. The Pelaxian tactical specialist, number 1, collapsed, gasping. Tactical specialist number 2 was on the ground clutching his wrist, Some small bones definitely fractured. That left Torv. The big Krellian had been watching with increasing disbelief. Now his expression shifted to something between rage and fear. He charged. All that mass and momentum behind him. Unstoppable force meets. Well, you know how the saying goes. Kira sidestepped at the last possible microsecond, grabbed a fistful of Torv's uniform as he passed, and used his own momentum to redirect him face first into the corridor wall. The impact left a visible dent. Torv slid down to the floor, dazed, purple blood streaming from his nose. 47 seconds. 6 opponents. All of them bigger, stronger, trained since childhood in their respective species' combat traditions, all of them on the ground. Kira picked up her datapad, checked the screen for damage, found none. She looked directly at the security camera. I swear she knew exactly where it was and shrugged. Then she stepped over Torv's groaning form and continued toward the meal hall. I sat in my office staring at the screen, my primary and secondary hearts both hammering. What in the 18 systems had I just witnessed? I pulled up Kira's file again, scanned through it more carefully this time. Under combat qualifications, it listed basic planetary defense training, standard marksmanship, elementary hand-to-hand combat. Elementary. That's the word they had used. If that was elementary, what in the void did advanced look like? I had to report this, of course. Filed an incident report called Medical Services for the Injured Cadets. Put in a request for Kira to meet with the discipline board. Standard procedure for any cadet involved in a fight regardless of circumstances. The meeting was scheduled for the following morning. That night, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I accessed the broader student records, looking for any other incidents involving the human cadet. What I found was, well, concerning might be too mild a word. 3 separate complaints filed against her by other cadets, all withdrawn before reaching official channels. 2 requests for transfer to different training squads, both from squad leaders who cited fundamental incompatibility with human training methods. 1 note from the medical center about a sparring accident where Kira's partner, a Draxian combat specialist, had sustained 4 fractured ribs and a concussion. The medical report noted, with what I now recognized as significant understatement, that the human appears to have underdeveloped restraint protocols in practice scenarios. I leaned back in my chair, running through what I knew about Earth. Barely past the threshold for coalition contact. No faster than light technology until we gave it to them. No energy weapons. No void combat capability. By all standard metrics, they were primitives playing at civilization. So why was I sitting here feeling like we had all made a terrible miscalculation? Morning came. The discipline board convened in conference chamber 3. 5 board members, myself as recorder, and various academy officials. We waited. Kira arrived exactly on time. Not a second early or late. She wore her standard cadet uniform, perfectly pressed. Every regulation followed to the letter. She stood at attention in front of the board table, face neutral. Dean Corix, a distinguished Voltex administrator with 40 years of service, cleared his 3 throats. Cadet Webb, you are here to answer for yesterday's incident in Corridor 7. 6 cadets were injured, several seriously. What do you have to say? Self-defense, sir, Kira replied immediately. They surrounded me, threatened physical violence, and attacked first. I responded with appropriate force. Appropriate? One of the board members, a Palaxian commander, leaned forward. You put 6 cadets in medical care. Yes, sir. As opposed to killing them, which I could have done. Under Earth military protocols, when 6 combatants attack a single soldier, lethal force is authorized. I showed restraint. The board members exchanged glances. This was not going the way they expected. These were not combatants, Dean Corix said carefully. These were fellow cadets, who attacked me, sir, with intent to cause harm. The distinction seems arbitrary from my perspective. I watched this exchange with growing fascination. Kira wasn't defensive, wasn't apologetic. She was stating facts, cold and clinical, like she was reporting mission results. Commander Thrix, our senior tactical instructor, spoke up. Cadet Webb, your file indicates only basic combat training. Where did you learn those techniques? Kira's expression didn't change. The techniques I used yesterday were basic close-quarters combat, sir. Standard instruction for all Earth military personnel. Standard? Thrix's mandibles clicked in disbelief. You disabled 6 trained fighters in under a minute. 47 seconds, sir. And respectfully, they weren't that well trained. Their coordination was poor, their attacks were telegraphed, and they severely underestimated their opponent. Classic tactical failures. The room went very quiet. Dean Corrick steepled his fingers, all four hands forming a complex geometric shape. Cadet Webb, are you saying that the Coalition's finest combat cadets, selected from warrior cultures across 100 worlds, are poorly trained by Earth standards? For the first time, Kira hesitated, like she was choosing her words carefully. No, sir. I'm saying they're trained for different combat philosophies. Your species evolved in environments with different pressures. Earth is, well, we're newer to civilization. We're still very close to being apex predators. Our combat training reflects that. Apex predators. The phrase hung in the air like a live charge. Be that as it may, Dean Corrick continued, your actions cannot go without consequences. The other cadets' families are demanding justice. Some are calling for your expulsion. I understand, sir. However, and here the Dean's expression softened slightly, the surveillance footage does clearly show that you were attacked first. Self-defense claims are valid. Therefore, the board has decided on mandatory counseling, restricted privileges for 2 weeks, and mandatory anger management training. I saw Kira's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Sir, I wasn't angry. That's the problem. I was completely calm, and that, right there, was when I realized how dangerous humans actually were, not because they were aggressive, not because they were violent, but because they could do violence, extreme violence, with complete emotional detachment, like flipping a switch. The meeting concluded. Kira saluted, turned, and left. I thought that was the end of it. A diplomatic incident smoothed over. Lessons learned. Everyone moves on. I was so wrong. It's almost funny. Almost. Because 3 days later, Cadet Torv and his friends didn't show up to mandatory formation. Academy security went to their quarters. Empty. Their belongings were still there, but the cadets themselves? Gone. That's when I started to get really worried. The disappearances triggered a full academy lockdown within an hour. Security teams swept every corridor, every training facility, every storage compartment. Commander Thrix personally led the search, his tactical experience treating this like a military operation rather than missing students. They found nothing. 6 cadets vanished like smoke. I was in the security command center when they brought Kira in for questioning. She walked flanked by 2 guards, completely relaxed, like she was heading to lunch instead of an interrogation. Commander Thrix stood at the center console. Multiple holographic displays showing search grids, heat signatures, and security footage loops. He turned when Kira entered, his compound eyes fixed on her with unsettling intensity. Cadet Webb, 6 students who recently attacked you are now missing. You understand why we need to speak with you? Of course, sir. Happy to help however I can. Where were you last night between the hours of 2200 and 0400? In my quarters, sir. Studying advanced navigation protocols. I have time-stamped access logs that should confirm my door didn't open during those hours. Thrix gestured, and one of the technicians pulled up the relevant data. Sure enough, Kira's quarters showed no egress during the specified time frame. Her door had remained sealed all night. And you have no knowledge of where these cadets might be? None whatsoever, sir. Kira's face was perfectly neutral. Too neutral, like she was actively suppressing something. I leaned forward from my observation position, studying her body language. Every muscle under control, breathing steady. Heart rate probably baseline. Either she was telling the truth, or she was the most accomplished liar I had ever encountered. Cadet Webb, I interrupted, stepping into the conversation. Forgive me, but you don't seem particularly concerned about 6 missing students. She turned those sharp eyes toward me. Should I be? Administrator Vec? They attacked me 3 days ago. They're not exactly my friends, but surely you must have some theory about what happened. I have several theories, actually. Want to hear them? Thrix nodded slowly. Kira counted on her fingers. 1. They got embarrassed by losing to a human and left the academy voluntarily. 2. They're hiding somewhere planning another attack because pride won't let them quit. 3. Someone else with a grudge against them used the opportunity of our conflict to make their move. 4. They got into trouble completely unrelated to me. Should I continue? That won't be necessary, Thrix said. You're dismissed but remain available for further questioning. Kira saluted and left. I watched her go, that nagging feeling in my gut intensifying. Commander, I said quietly. Something isn't right here. Obviously. No, I mean with her. She's too calm. Too prepared with explanations. Threx's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Tuller complete file. Everything Earth sent when she enrolled. I want to know exactly who we're dealing with. It took me 3 hours to decrypt and translate all the documents. Earth's data formatting was still primitive by our standards, and half their military records used archaic encryption protocols that our systems found baffling. What I found made my blood run cold. Kira Webb wasn't just some cadet from a planetary defense force. Before joining the Cultural Exchange Program, she had been part of something called the Special Operations Command. Specifically, a unit designated as Intelligence and Direct Action. Her actual rank was lieutenant, not cadet. She had voluntarily taken a demotion to participate in the program. Her service record included operations on Earth that were heavily redacted, but the summaries I could access were disturbing. Hostage rescue in hostile territory, counterinsurgency operations, something called high-value target elimination that I suspected was a polite term for assassination. And here was the kicker, the part that made everything click into place. Her psychological evaluation included a note from her commanding officer. Lieutenant Webb demonstrates exceptional compartmentalization abilities, can transition from combat to civilian interaction without residual stress indicators. Recommend for deep cover operations. I ran to Commander Thrix's office, the files loaded on my personal tablet. He was reviewing security footage running the same loops over and over. Commander, we have a serious problem. I showed him what I found. Watched his expression shift from curiosity to alarm to something approaching fear. She's a spy, he said flatly. Or was. Or still is. I don't know, but she's definitely not what her enrollment papers claimed. Why would Earth send an intelligence operative to our academy? Maybe they didn't, I suggested. Maybe she volunteered for reasons of her own. Or maybe this whole cultural exchange thing was a cover from the start. Thrix stood abruptly. We need to find those missing cadets immediately. If she did something to them, if this was some kind of covert operation, we could be looking at an interstellar incident. We expanded the search, brought in external security contractors, scanned areas beyond the academy grounds, used every sensor, every tracking protocol, every piece of surveillance technology at our disposal. Still nothing. 4 more days passed. The missing cadets' families were demanding answers. The Krellian ambassador himself had contacted Dean Korex, making thinly veiled threats about diplomatic consequences. The Zentari government was talking about withdrawing their students from the program, and through it all, Kira Webb attended classes like nothing was wrong, participated in drills, essayed her examinations, sat alone in the meal hall eating her human-appropriate rations, completely unbothered by the chaos swirling around her. On the 8th day, I decided to do something incredibly stupid. I waited until late evening, then went to Kira's quarters personally, knocked on her door. She opened it immediately, unsurprised to see me. Administrator Vec. Little late for official business, isn't it? May I come in? She stepped aside. Her quarters were immaculate. Regulation perfect. Personal items minimal. A few books in physical format. Something humans apparently still preferred. And a small photograph of what I assumed was her family. I'll be direct, I said, closing the door behind me. I know what you really are. I know about your military background, the special operations designation, the intelligence training. Kira sat on her bunk, completely relaxed. Okay, did you do something to those cadets? Define something. Don't play games with me, Lieutenant. She smiled at the rank usage. Administrator, if I had wanted those cadets dead, they would be dead. If I had wanted them hurt, they would be in your medical facility, not missing. If I had wanted them discredited, I would have manufactured evidence of wrongdoing. None of those things happened. Then where are they? I genuinely have no idea. She leaned back against the wall. But can I tell you what I think happened? Please. I think they got scared. Not of me specifically, but of what I represented. They attacked a human, someone they considered inferior, and got absolutely demolished. That kind of ego damage, especially for warriors from proud cultures, it breaks something fundamental in their self-image. I think they ran rather than face the shame. It was plausible. Disturbingly plausible. Or, Kira continued, and this is just speculation, someone else in the academy who had problems with them saw an opportunity. Frame the human, get rid of enemies, solve 2 problems at once. You sound like you've thought about this extensively. It's what I'm trained to do, Administrator. Analyze situations, predict outcomes, identify threats. You can take the operative out of intelligence work, but the mindset stays. I sat down in her desk chair, suddenly exhausted. Why are you really here, Kira? What does Earth want from this program? She was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. Earth is new to your coalition. We're the junior members, The primitives, the species everyone looks down on. My government wanted someone here who could assess your military capabilities, understand your tactics, identify potential threats. I volunteered because I was curious, because I wanted to see if the galaxy was really as advanced as you all claimed. And what have you concluded? That you're complacent. You've had peace for so long, fought wars so cleanly with your regulations and honor codes, that you've forgotten what real violence looks like, what survival-level combat means. You train warriors for sport. We train soldiers for war. There's a difference. The words chilled me, but I couldn't deny their truth. The Coalition hadn't faced existential conflict in 3 generations. Our combat training was, well, civilized. A sudden alert interrupted us. Thrix's voice crackled over the emergency channel. All personnel report to security immediately. We found that Kira and I ran to the security center together. The command room was packed with officials, all staring at the main display screen. The 6 missing cadets were sitting in what appeared to be a cargo bay, looking confused and disoriented. They were unharmed, physically at least, but clearly had no idea where they were or how they had gotten there. Where was this? Dean Corex demanded. Cargo vessel, the security tech responded. Automated freighter bound for the Pelec system. It was in standby orbit, scheduled to depart yesterday, but had a navigation malfunction. When repair crews boarded, they found our cadets in the hold. How did they get there? Unknown, sir. The vessel's logs show no unauthorized access, no security breaches. It's like they just appeared. I looked at Kira. She was studying the screen with professional interest, her expression giving nothing away. Scan them for drugs, Thrix ordered. Someone must have sedated them, transported them while unconscious. The medical teams did exactly that. Found nothing. No chemical traces, no injection marks, no indication of forced sedation. The cadets themselves claimed they couldn't remember the past 8 days. Just blank, gone from their memories like someone had deleted the files. It was impossible. Completely impossible. Unless, I pulled up Earth's technology files, the ones that came with the cultural exchange documentation. Skimmed through capabilities, looking for anything that might explain selective memory erasure. Found nothing conclusive. But I found something interesting. A note about Earth's intelligence services developing advanced interrogation and counterintelligence protocols. No specifics, heavily classified, but the implication was clear. Earth had technology or techniques we didn't know about. I cornered Kira in the corridor after the briefing. It was you. I don't know how and I can't prove it, but it was you. She met my eyes directly. Administrator. I was in my quarters. The logs confirm it. And even if I wanted to move 6 unconscious cadets across the academy, transport them to an orbital vessel and erase their memories, how exactly would a lone human cadet accomplish that without anyone noticing? I don't know. That's what terrifies me. She smiled. That same predatory expression from the corridor fight. You want my advice? Close the case. Call it a prank. Call it temporary mass amnesia. Call it whatever makes the families happy. But stop digging. Because the truth won't make anyone feel better. Is that a threat? It's friendly counsel. From someone who understands how these things work. The next day, Dean Corex announced the official findings. The 6 cadets had apparently been victims of a sophisticated hazing ritual by unknown parties, involving illegal sedatives and falsified transport logs. A full investigation would continue, but the immediate threat was resolved. The cadets were receiving psychological counseling and would return to classes within a week. Kira's name was cleared officially. The discipline charges were dropped. Everything returned to normal, except I knew better. I started watching her more carefully, tracking her movements, reviewing her communications, looking for any indication of what had really happened. And I found something. Something that changed everything. 3 weeks after the incident, I was reviewing Academy records for routine audit purposes, cross-referencing student files against Coalition databases, standard procedure. And I noticed something odd. The 6 cadets who had attacked Kira, their records had been altered. Subtly. Tiny changes to performance evaluations, modifications to tactical assessment scores, adjustments to psychological profiles, nothing dramatic, but consistent patterns that painted them all as slightly less competent, slightly more unstable than they actually were. I traced the modifications. They had been made from a terminal in the archive section during off hours, using administrative override codes that should have been impossible for a cadet to access. The timestamp showed the changes had been made the night after the corridor fight, hours before the cadets disappeared. I pulled the security footage from the archive section for that night, And there she was, Kira Webb, sitting at a terminal, fingers moving across holographic interfaces with practiced efficiency. No hesitation, no uncertainty. She knew exactly what she was doing. But here's what made my blood run ice cold. She looked directly at the security camera twice. Once when she entered, once when she left. Both times with that same slight smile. She knew I would find this eventually. She wanted me to find it. I confronted Commander Thrix with everything. The modified records, the footage, my theory about what had really happened. He listened in silence, his expression growing darker. So what are you suggesting? He finally asked. That this human cadet somehow kidnapped 6 students, transported them to orbit, erased their memories, framed them with modified academy records, and did all of this while maintaining perfect alibi documentation. Yes, sir, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. That's impossible. Administrator. I know, sir. That's the problem. Thrix was quiet for a long time. Then he made a decision. I wasn't expecting. We're going to recommend Cadet Webb for early graduation. Accelerated program completion. Full honors. She'll be off this station in 2 weeks. Sir, we can't just— Yes. Administrator. We can. And we will. Because the alternative is admitting that a single human operative infiltrated our premier military academy, executed a covert operation under our noses, and we couldn't prove anything. The political fallout would be catastrophic. Better to call her a prodigy, give her a medal, and get her away from our students. What about Earth? What about the intelligence she's gathered? We'll send a diplomatic note expressing concerns about the appropriateness of sending trained operatives to educational exchanges. They'll deny everything. We'll all pretend to believe them. Standard interstellar politics, and that's exactly what happened. Kira Webb graduated 2 weeks later, top of her accelerated class. During the ceremony, she shook hands with Dean Corix, accepted her honors, and gave a short speech about cultural understanding and mutual respect. I stood in the back watching, and when her eyes found mine in the crowd, she winked. The Earth transport shuttle took her away the next morning. I watched it depart from the observation deck, a small vessel carrying one very dangerous human back to her primitive little planet. 6 months later, I heard through unofficial channels that 3 more human cadets had been accepted into the academy. All from the same special operations background. All volunteer. Earth wasn't sending students anymore. They were sending scouts. Learning our weaknesses, testing our capabilities, preparing for something we couldn't yet imagine. And the truly terrifying part. We were welcoming them with open arms, too arrogant to recognize the threat until it was too late. I submitted my resignation last week, took a posting at a remote science station far from any military installations, because I realized something fundamental about humans that the rest of the coalition hasn't grasped yet. They're not joining our civilization. They're studying it, learning how it works so they can eventually surpass it. And the worst part, the part that keeps me awake during sleep cycles, is simple. Kira Webb wasn't exceptional by human standards. She told us herself that first day, she was middle of the pack. Average at best. If that's average, what do their best look like? I don't want to find out, and I hope for the sake of every species in this coalition that nobody else does either, but something tells me we will. Sooner than we think. They say Earth is primitive. They say humans are barely civilized. They say we have nothing to fear from a species that only recently discovered void travel. They're wrong. So catastrophically wrong. And by the time everyone realizes it, it will be far too late to do anything about it. The humans are coming. Not with fleets or weapons or declarations of war. They're coming one cadet at a time. Learning, watching, waiting. And when they're ready, when they've learned everything they need to know about us, well, I suspect that's when the real story begins. But I won't be around to see it. I've seen enough. I've seen what one human can do. I don't need to witness what happens when they decide to stop playing nice and start playing to win. Good luck, Coalition. You're going to need it.